My name is Sarah Batchu. I am the Director of Programs at Fifth Avenue Committee. I use she, her pronouns. For those who don't know, Fifth Avenue Committee is a almost 50-year-old community development corporation, which is a fancy way of saying we do a ton of things to address issues in our community, primarily economic issues. So we build and develop affordable housing. We have direct services, which is my area of work, like adult education programs and organizing programs and helping people access benefits and get financial counseling. We also help manage the affordable lottery process and leasing up affordable units. So happy to talk about that offline, but I wanted to start off with a question for all of you, which I am curious about. I want to know how many of you know the role that is immediately above you in your organization. If you do know the title of that role, I want you to put it in the chat. If you don't know, I would love for you just to say don't know. Amazing. Okay, so we have a lot of people. It's EDs, CEOs, Chief Development Officer. Okay, so seeing a lot of people who know, not a lot of people who don't know. I don't think I see anybody who doesn't know. So that's amazing. So, question I have for you as a follow-up is how many people know the skills and competencies they need to demonstrate to advance to that role? If you do know, I want you to give me a thumbs up. If you don't know, I want you to give me a thumbs down. Okay, so I see some thumbs up. I see some yeses. I see some folks who say they're kind of in between or they know more or less. I saw some people who are like, it's not relevant. So curious about not relevant, who could talk offline. But this is a question I get all the time in my organization. People always want to know, how can I make more money? Or how can I advance to the next phase or opportunity in this organization? And so, what we decided to do as an organization is create something called a career progression framework. And this is something I'll say, and I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see some examples. In the private sector, this is something super common that we have a ton of examples of. This is how private sector makes it clear. So this is an example from Dropbox. They have a career progression framework, which I'll explain in a second, but I just want you to kind of see what it entails as an example. But they'll have a title, they'll show the scope of this role, they'll show, different ways you can create impact, what your decision making involves. They can show a variety of things. So for Dropbox in particular, they wanted to create this framework for all of their engineering roles. So in this example, you can like go down and you can see, an IC3 quality engineer. How is that different from an IC4? And there's a ton of other examples in the for-profit space. This is another organization that's a little bit more simple. They do it kind of in reverse, where they put the different dimensions that they evaluate each role on, and then they'll say for impact, this is what an associate product manager does versus a product lead one. Now, for us in the nonprofit space, this is not super relevant. And so, as I was thinking about with my team, how can we make this relevant to our organization? We landed on we still want to create something like a career progression framework, which is a structured system that outlines the path employees can take to advance within the organization. It usually includes, as you can see in the examples, the job levels, titles. It may include some sort of description of responsibilities. It may talk about how the role contributes to overall impact. It may include, expectations or behaviors, or like I asked you earlier, competencies, skill sets. And so we want to do that for our organization, but we didn't really have an example of how this is done. And so I turned to AI to help me think about how I could do this within our organization. And so I used Claude. And because this ended up being a very intensive process, I started with a project. As many people probably know, and I think has come up in some of these peer learning calls, Claude, you hit a limit the more kind of inputs you do within a certain time period. And even though I have a pro account through my organization, I didn't want to hit that limit. So I created this project workspace. And so all of these chats are able to reference each other. So if I did something in one chat, but then I kind of ran out of space there, I can start a new chat and it still has the information. The other thing I'll say that the project space allows is for you to add files that are reference files. It stores memory specific to the workflows in here. You could give it instructions. So you can see like in the memory, it like has figured out that I'm part of the leadership team at my organization. It's figured out that I'm trying to make this particular project. It knows a little bit about my organization. It knows some things about our branding, which will come up in a second. So it knows a ton of stuff. What I basically set out to do, and I'll just like very high level speak to it because I'm pretty close to time here, is I started with the job descriptions that our organization had already for a particular team. In this case, I focused on my organizing team. And I put all of those job descriptions in and I gave it a prompt to kind of act as if it were an HR manager and was looking at our organization's overall framework for jobs and then looking at these job descriptions and how could we standardize this so it fits the organization's existing framework, but also makes sense as you grow within each role that you get more responsibility. And so it did its work. It came up with a bunch of feedback. I'm not going to read through it all because of time. But eventually it came back to me with a updated set of job descriptions, which came out in a really pretty template, which I didn't realize it was going to do, but it did because I had given it branding guidelines elsewhere in the system. So that was really nice because I'll say the ones I gave, which I can't show you at the moment, were not super pretty. And what I liked about this is it's a consistent format. There's things that are a bit internal and not external here that I may remove at a later stage, but it gave me like a very good overview of each role. And it even made it so that when the human review could come in, I could even compare these. Like instead of having apples and oranges, I had apples, apples. So that's what I did in my first step. And I went through a few other steps that I'm going to skip over, but the last step was basically how do I create the spreadsheet that I described at the beginning of the presentation or like those websites that I was showing you. And so I had a template essentially of all the things that our organization wanted to make clear to our staff. And I put that into an Excel spreadsheet and made a template, put it in my project workspace. And then I asked Claude to essentially, through all of these prompts, put everything into that Excel spreadsheet. And it came out looking like this. So as you can see, this is just 4 roles. We could expand it to include other roles that maybe don't currently exist on this team. But from the left side to the right side, you can see the salaries go up. You can see it goes from entry-level positions to more experienced positions being required, before getting to be into that role. You can talk about how each program impacts the overall opportunities within the organization that we're providing to our participants. We have technical and content expertise, soft skills, education, plenty of things, but I'm over time now, so I'm going to stop talking. I found this really helpful. Again, human review is still really important part of the process, but it allowed us to really at least zero in on what are the things that need to become consistent.